a rather dark enterprise. Go back, from where we are now, tracing a path from there to here. With gaps and unknowns, of course, but I can't help thinking they are more linked than I at first believed. Mentioned in my article a working strategy, but only briefly as a side point. Now I look at it in more detail. The foundling hospitals. At first I had just thought they had one in London, but it seems there were others. And I revisit this subject, as it would seem in these modern times too, children have and are being used as objects of experiment. That comment coming to mind from Willard Graylin, a noted head of bioethics who proposed the warehouses of the living dead, to house bio-emporiums of living cadavers, where people could be spared body parts being kept alive by way of machines and respirators, saying that by introducing those warehouses, they would no longer need to use prisoners, volunteers, or mentally retarded children. Yes, implying that they already had a system of harvesting body parts from them. Horrifying, and is covered a bit more in my article, perhaps. But back to the Foundling Hospital. The first one actually being in Dublin, Ireland in 1704. Strangely, the two purposes of this being established was to avoid deaths and murders of illegitimate children and to teach the Protestant faith. Sounds quite weird and the opposite when you read how it went in the long term. Child deaths during transport to the hospital or while staying in the hospital were not infrequent. And for some rather alarming stats on that, the words not infrequent being an understatement, constant would be more truthful. Between 1790 and 1796, some 5,216 infants were sent there, of whom 5,215 died. Between 1796 and 1826, 51,150 infants were admitted to the hospital, of whom 41,524 died. Now, it is said that following excavations, no remains or bodies have been found at the sites, yet the volume of deaths doesn't appear to be disputed. Could this have been an early start to the rather sinister industries we have today, of child trafficking and using body parts linked to the abortion industry specifically, and by extension, the medical establishment? This was just one of two sites in Ireland, the other being in Cork and having very little detail about it. Shortly after, the London one opened, and as soon as you see it was petitioned by a philanthropist and got many aristocrats and notable people on board, it doesn't quite look right. Seems it was streamlined into a baby farming enterprise, taking babies under 12 months, shipping them to the country for education until 4 or 5, then trained to be servants or apprentices and sent to work for your master on contract. Let me guess if any of the recipients of those staff were the very same lords and ladies who endorsed the project, again making it rather lucrative to force people into giving up their children, or just taking them. And maybe that's how they managed to control the workforce after a time, because over half of them had been trained and conditioned pretty much from birth, making them more compliant servants with lower expectations and understanding, as they were meant to have, keeping them down from day one. It seems though that any institution that has ever appeared to be there to assist or help has actually been a cover for a different purpose, and now making it so everyone goes through the same system and conditioning, churning out the next generation of workers and body parts. As it does seem that is all we are viewed as, even if the methods and mechanics of it have changed with the times. And maybe that worked for a couple of 100 years, so the workhouse and schools took over, children allowed to grow up with their parents again, getting daily conditioning from them as they were trained, and then at school with the societal conditioning of the day. Seems like the wheels have come off that one a bit recently, so who knows what kind of institutions we will have in the future. But if we judge them on the past and present ones, we would do best to avoid them, as if our lives depended on it.